So I can't believe it's episode 3 already.
I know.
It's gone in a flash.
Where's it gone?
Welcome, Lisa, to this edition of Leadership Actually. It's not love, it's leadership actually.
Absolutely.
And I'm delighted that we're talking about career management today. And we've got an exciting guest, haven't we?
We have, yeah, one of the best. Hi Michelle, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. Well, really good that you have come along to talk to us today about, well, one of the things that you do. So you do many things that we've seen, brilliant expert in, but one of the big areas that you like to focus in is career management. It's one of your passion areas,
Absolutely.
I believe, and helping people really find their inner compass, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that. And I watched you recently in one of your brilliant talks. Fantastic. And you talked a lot about VUCA. What does VUCA mean? I'm not going into the questions, but I think you can explain it better than I can.
I think we hear this term sometimes, and it really stands for just volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And it's a term to describe the world we're living in. It sometimes feels it's very fast-paced, it's very chaotic, and perhaps not as predictable as it's been in the past.
Yeah. I think people are really feeling that, aren't they? You know, this kind of, it feels like the speed of change and what's going on is even faster. People talk about that a lot, and actually then how do you navigate anything, but in particular your careers? So yeah, it's really good that you've come to talk to us a bit more about our inner compass and what that means. So we'll ask you some questions in a moment.
Sure.
But Lee, when you think about your career and how you navigated that, what were some of the things that might have not gone so well, or you wish you'd known now, maybe?
Sure. I started off as a primary school teacher.
Did you?
In my career, and I did it for about 3 years, and then unfortunately my stepdad took his own life. So this is quite quite deep straight off, but it really kind of wobbled me at that point, and I made a decision right there that I didn't want to impact negatively on any kid's life. So we didn't really talk about mental health, for example, then, or how things have affected you because you wear this armour and this badge. But the reality is kids see through that in a heartbeat.
They just focus on it, don't they? Like a mirror of whatever's going on.
Yeah, so I made a really conscious choice to then go with people my own age, because it wasn't necessarily what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
And I guess just discover me again, and like as a 24-year-old, and have some fun and have a social life and embrace. So I went to work for British Gas. And I'd, like, in a call centre, and I was like, I get paid to talk.
There's a change there, that's a change.
It was a huge, but I was like, wow. But, and people dread
you go talking, do you know?
I don't mind it. So it's going to be great to listen today to a real expert. But yeah, there's been lots of junctions where you go, am I doing the right thing? And I've seen so many people in their careers, and I'm sure you'll talk about this, Michelle, that they fall into situations as opposed to taking control and having a plan.
Yeah.
And that's my big observation in the last 20 years of corporate life, is how many people end up towards the end of the career and like, oh well, I don't really know why I was doing this. I did something when I started off at school or university, and then subsequently I've had a career as a project manager because I got an opportunity and someone said, well, I believe in you, go and do it.
Yeah.
But I truly believe if you're doing work that you love and that gives you joy, then it doesn't feel like work. And I guess in one way I'm lucky that I've had that for the majority of my career.
Yeah.
But I've made lots of mistakes. And actually leadership has been one of the toughest roles and jobs. It is hard.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
And I know, and that's the purpose of this podcast, isn't it? And we've already talked about it and introduced it, but that'll be a constant theme around how do we support people be great leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. Does some of that resonate with what people talk to you about when you're trying to guide them?
Absolutely, because I think it's quite common that you go to education, you go to college, you go to university, you get your qualification, you go, I better find a job, you enter industry, you find a job, then you get good at the job, you want to establish yourself, and you maybe get to your 30s, like say your late 20s, and you think, well, actually, do I really want to be doing this? Sometimes it's so easy to be on the treadmill and just to follow the path because it's there, like you say, because you've got an opportunity, without consciously thinking, is this really me? So yeah, it's really common.
Yeah, absolutely. It resonates with me.
And what about for yourself? Where have you had?
There was one day I was talking about this the other day, actually, that where I fell off kind of from a leadership point of view. So I was working in the bank in Manchester, and this opportunity came up for this role, like my ideal role, that I thought it was this ideal role. And I was being mentored at the time, and he said to me, if you want that job, you've got to go and ask for it. You've got to go to the person you've been working for. I'm going to say, I want this job. What do I need to do to get it? And I was like, oh my God, I've never done that. I can't do that. And as a female as well, that was really hard. Like, it's not just something that was easy. But he was like, go on, go on, go on. So I made an appointment. I went and talked to this manager. I didn't particularly get on with him or like him. I had this perception that he was something. Actually, it turned out wasn't. So I went in, spoke to him, and he's like, oh, all right then, yeah, okay, well, thank you for coming to see me. He says, so, yeah, you seem to do a good job, he says, but you're not assertive enough. So what I need to see is you being more assertive. I was like, okay. So I went away and I thought, actually, I prided myself at the time that I would deal with my team. I loved being a leader. I loved looking after people. It was like a real privilege. But if something came up, I would deal with it, and I thought, well, unless it's something that really needs escalating and it's gone beyond, I never really thought I had to tell anyone. Like, we've dealt with that, that's good, let's move forward. So probably people didn't see that, and we had a nice team and everybody thought we were in a good place. But I really wanted this job, like I really wanted it. So I thought, right, well, I'm gonna have to do that. So overnight I changed, and so I went into work and I was visibly more assertive, in a very different way to the way that I was used to working. I called things out, I kind of reported things that, well, I dealt with this and I dealt with that. And I lost a few things. So I lost some sleep. I found that at night I just couldn't go to sleep. Like, what was going on? This just did not land well with me. And I lost my team in many ways, so they were like, what is going on?
She's been on a course, actually.
What is going on? Why is all this happening? There was a bit of rebellion in the team, and I lost some of their trust, and they didn't work as hard, they didn't do things as well as they used to, and I really felt like I lost myself in that process. I did get the job. I did end up getting the job, but I vowed to myself that I wouldn't do that again, and I had conversations with the team, and they told me the impact that I'd had. And I was trying to be assertive in a way that wasn't me. And I needed to find myself again and get that back into my leadership ethos. So it was a real lesson where I fell off.
So many things are going on in my head now.
Yeah.
Even the fact that there's a need to be seen as an assertive leader. I'm sure we can explore that in many forms in different shows and stuff. But and the fact that pressure and losing yourself, that is really tough, isn't it? Trying to be something that you're not. And I'm sure that there'll be listeners listening to this right now that can resonate with that.
Yeah.
Because you get to a point or a situation where you lose authenticity.
Yeah.
Or you're not congruent with what you believe and your values are to what you've got to do in that moment, or what you choose to do in that moment.
Yeah.
Because it's always a choice, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when you're not being yourself, you're not coming across as assertive in a way that suits you, are you? So it's just nobody wins. And but it's a real big lesson to learn. I see it a lot as well, in our more junior leaders, that they're trying to shape into the culture of the organisation, or the leaders that tell them the feedback sometimes isn't a gift, if it's taken black and white, isn't it?
Like, what does assertive look like in that situation? And whatever it looks like to that person, do you want to be that person if that's what it takes to get the job? And I think that's where your values are really key.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you seen people have lots of fall off moments when you've talked to someone?
Absolutely. The interesting one, you mentioned, for female leaders, I've seen it where they've been themselves, they've done a great job, so they've got the promotion, then suddenly they get into the top team and they think they have to be someone different in order to fit in, and that's a real shame, because whatever you did got you to that position and it made you really successful. Why would you stop doing it? That's what you got promoted for. But it's a really easy trap to fall into, particularly when you've got that pressure around you.
Yeah, and you forget your strengths, don't you?
You do.
And just got to fill these gaps and be different, rather than using those to deliver what you need to deliver.
Yeah.
Equally, I've seen so many leaders become leaders that are accidental leaders.
Yeah.
That actually it's the complete wrong choice for them. I've had people in training sessions from a leadership saying, I was never meant to be a leader. I was just good at my job.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure listeners listening to this will resonate with lots of people that say, I didn't choose or never wanted an aspiration to be a leader.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real choice for people to do leadership. You talked about people, and that's the point of this podcast, because it's not just about strategy and spreadsheets. It is about how do you get the best out of people and the pressure and dealing with that kind of stuff all the time and all the bits in between, right?
Yeah.
And how, if we can do anything out of this podcast, hopefully we help people just spark curiosity and be really humble and honest with some of this stuff that you might be thinking and maybe haven't had the conversation. Are you a leader right now that actually, if you had a choice tomorrow, you'd stop?
Yeah. It's not many times when the early doors and you get on and go, I know, when I grow up, I want to be a professional leader. But you don't think that necessarily. But what it needs is that, that real appetite to go, I need to, because it's a big investment. You're looking after people. It's a tough job. But I think this is a really good point to bring in what you talk about. So we started that podcast with inner compass work. Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about what that is and where it came from and why it's important?
Yeah, it just that's the term I use, I suppose, to refer to how you make your decisions. So it's about understanding yourself and taking your direction from there, rather than scanning the environment and seeing what's out there, what can I have or what is it giving me, and then following that. So, for example, we mentioned a VUCA world a little bit earlier, and there's so much going on, and sometimes I think Lee talked about this, people just going down that path, going to university, going to work, following the career path, getting there and thinking, well, do I even want it? And that's quite normal, I think, particularly when we're young and we don't know ourselves. And it's so easy to take your cues from the environment. What is the economy doing? What jobs are available? What is in the structure? What is going on in my industry? And they go, well, what can I have? And taking it from there. And then you can try and create a career plan to get you through it. The problem is that the world is so changeable right now. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on in the geopolitical arena that's just turned things on a sixpence. Yeah. So your plan might be obsolete by in a month or 2 months or even a year's time. So it's really hard to plan. And so Inner Compass for me is about knowing yourself and taking your cues and creating your direction from that point. So what is your purpose? Sounds like a big word. Yeah, what are your motivations? What are your strengths? What are your values? Knowing yourself and then going, well, actually, what do I want to create? Where do I want to go? Who am I? And creating a direction from there. And using that like a compass to navigate your way through whatever life throws at you. Because I think people think your career direction is about the big moments, the big decisions, the crossroads. But it's really about lots of little decisions. To use a financial term, it's like the compound effect of all the little things you do.
Yeah, I love that.
And if all those come from your values, then you'll get where you want to be. But if you haven't really given that a lot of thought, or it's not fresh in your mind, those decisions will be taken by whichever way the wind is blowing. Yeah. And you might not end up where you want to be. Like, I think of it like a butterfly, I've always wondered, do butterflies know where they're going? Because do they have a plan? Yeah, do they just like go, oh, here I am, I'm going to set up my life here now? Or do they do it with purpose? I've read online, they do actually have strong instincts about this kind of thing.
I'd love to be a butterfly.
It'd be amazing.
It's another class.
Here I am. But I think, you don't want to be, blow with the wind. You want to know which way you're going, and you can't control the overall journey or have a really clear map or a plan. But if you know where you're coming from, then that informs what you do. And lo and behold, you'll get there eventually, I think.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a nice way of looking at the world. I think it's really important. But where does that come from? Why is that something that you have evolved or developed? Where does that come from you personally, I guess?
A few things. I think one in my own career. I think early on, I think I did that same thing. Followed the career path, and then got to the point. It's like, oh, is this what I want? Yeah. And then I had to think long and hard about where I was going. I was much happier when I took matters into my own hands and was more proactive. Also, when we did the leadership program, I was designing a leadership program for a bank as well. I think a lot of us have that background, and this was after the financial crisis. And after the financial, what we used to do was we used to take the strategy, what was going on out there, the plans, the economy, everything, and then equip the leaders to deliver. But we realised after the financial crisis, the world was uncertain. We were having new leaders what felt like every 6 months. I thought, well, we can't really do that because the new leader will come in, they'll have a new strategy, it will be out of date. So I said to my colleague, look, we've got to focus on who is the leader, who are they, what are they about, and get them to hold on to that so they can navigate whatever comes at them, because they're going to live in a really changing world. And actually by doing it that way, we were able to better equip people to take charge of matters and do things right.
Nice.
And I love the idea of a compass, and you talked about the career ladder, and I think, so you do it in a linear fashion. Actually, it comes to my mind that it's not like that anymore. It's a bit more of a almost sat-nav effect, where there'll be detours and routes, and that's what springs to mind for me. And it's having the ability to pivot or adapt and go, actually, and I'm now going to take a sideways move or a lower down move, because it ultimately will get me to the destination where I want to be.
For sure.
I love that. And I think the work, you just said all there about my values and, knowing myself. It springs to mind in my experience that people find that difficult.
Yeah,
actually.
Definitely.
I know when I was trying to find my way and an identity, because I've seen lots of people do this, particularly leaders. The job title, and particularly if it's a leadership title, will be sort of entwined with their identity.
Yeah.
So if and when that's taken away, it has a huge knock-on effect. I recall the story where someone was invited to this gala dinner, and he used to go every year, and he was the CEO, and he really felt privileged and proud to go, and he talked about it, and he said actually the year that he wasn't the CEO, because he stepped down, he wasn't invited to the dinner anymore.
Wow.
Harsh.
Yeah,
and actually his realisation was he wasn't being invited to the dinner, actually his position was being invited to the dinner.
Mm.
And I don't know why that stuck in my mind, but it's like we are replaceable in roles. The world is morphing and changing. It feels like, particularly with the onset of AI, which I know you know a lot more about than I do, for sure. But it's in that sense, if you've got that compass and you've almost done that work yourself, it feels like it can really aid you make some more informed decisions.
Yeah, and talk about AI, that's the bit that's irreplaceable, isn't it? Like you say, roles are held by anyone who's competent, but actually what you bring, your unique contribution, comes from not just what you do or how well you do it, but who you are and why you do it, which I think is the distinguishing factor as well.
What advice would you give to anyone to really figure that stuff out, that might be seen woolly or a waste of time? Like, have you got any top tips that people can do really practically?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because one, it is so abstract and it can feel a little bit intangible, and so it's so easy to put it off because it is intangible. So I think that's the first one. I also think, like you mentioned earlier, the identity, I think ego gets in the way as well. Like, I know when I was younger, like I suffered from what I call Obi-Wan Kenobi syndrome. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And it's really flattering to your ego to have the title, to be invited to the dinner.
Yeah.
People have said to me, oh, will you take on this project? And I'm like, well, I haven't got capacity. They're like, oh, but we can't ask anyone else. You've got the experience, you've got the relationship. So I ended up being burnt out because it flattered my ego to be needed. We all want to be needed. We all want to feel that our expertise is valued. So I think sometimes that gets in the way. We do what is needed or what we are praised for, as opposed to what really lights us up. And I think that's a trap we can fall into. But the biggest tip I can make is to make time for it and to really value it, because it's not just going to hit you like a road to Damascus moment. It's not going to be like blinded by a light and no one's going to hand it to you. So you do have to put the time in. I'll tell you a good tip. The best bit of advice I ever got, and the realisation for me, is we talk about purpose like it's this big thing that you discover my purpose. And then someone said to me once, stop looking for your purpose. Purpose is chosen, it's decided, it's not discovered. If you don't, what is my purpose? Decide. Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you want to do what you want to do? What do you want to leave behind? And try it on for size. And if you don't like that purpose, choose another one. You might have a purpose for work, a purpose for home life, a purpose for your well-being, for your body or whatever. You can have lots of purposes and you can change them. They're never going to stay the same. So don't let it put you off. Think about what your reason is, make that your purpose, and then go out and do it. You can always change it. And Lee, the final thing is, make time. Personally, although I work on a self-employed basis, I still do my own performance reviews. So I do an end-of-year review,
Love
a
that.
6-month review, and I check in quarterly. But I use that, or even when I was employed, I use that as an opportunity to go, right, what are my purpose, what are my values, what do I really want, what are my strengths, what space do I want to play in? And I do that at the beginning of the year for my life. And I think that's the first one. Don't just do it for work or for leadership, because you think, what leader do I want to be and what do I want to achieve as a leader this year? But if you do that, you'll try to shoehorn it into life. Yeah. So either you won't get it done because life happens, or you'll do it, but you'll realise you let your family or your health suffer. So I'd say, what role does this play in my life first? And then come up with your values for that area. And then you'll go about things more intentionally. If you need help, I would say hire a coach, do a course, find some exercises. It does seem intangible, but there's plenty of stuff out there to help you do it.
I love that. What does your boss say in your reviews?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes she's kind, sometimes she's not. I don't often give myself a bonus, to be honest.
No, you don't, word. Definitely. I love that approach, though, that you still sit down and do your reviews and reflect on that. And I think that's really important, and understand your values and writing that down. I think that's great tips. But you also talk about a lot, like finding out what lights you up.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because, and the other is that you're not going to wake up one morning and have a big shiny light that says, this is your purpose.
Yeah.
How do you go about noticing or finding out what lights you up? So there's one thing to write it down and go, this is what I want. But is there anything else that we can do to kind of go, right, I'm trying to shape this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what's important to me. I'm trying to understand where I want to go. What sort of work do you do with people when you coach or do workshops with them?
It's a really good question, because that's the bit people grapple with. There's a few things you can do. I personally follow the energy. So one of the simple things you can do is just look back over your career or your work, or when I do my review for the last year, I just go, well, what lit me up? What was the energy? What felt good? What was I proud of? What was I really buzzed by? And that's not the same as what you're good at. And I think that's quite tricky, because sometimes we get praised for what we're good at and we feel really proud.
Yeah.
But actually, what was it that just innately lit me up? So I think, what is it that energizes? What is it you would do even if you didn't have to do it? What is the stuff you just get really absorbed and engrossed in? So you can do some reflection, just look on that. There are psychometric tools you can use. I'm a big fan of StrengthScope. There are plenty out there. Sometimes a tool like that can be a good jumping off point for finding that sort of thing. And then I would say, just create a bit of space for those things in your work or your life. So how can you carve out just little bits of time here and there, and bit by bit bring them in? So that's what I would follow. I would follow that natural, buzz, that natural energy that you have when you do something that you're really engrossed in.
Nice. And I guess in career, there's always things that you don't want to do. Like, it's always part of the role that you have to do. So this is the question, is there a good ratio? Ideally, is there an amount of time that you should be working to your energy and your buzz versus the things that you have to do? Or is it, is it just like a test and learn? Is there a formula?
There isn't a formula. I think StrengthScope is something like 80-20.
Yeah.
And that's the Pareto principle. I think it's good. I think it depends on you as a person, like how much of something are you willing to do in order to get the bigger trade-off. So I'm doing a personal development planning workshop next week, and I always start it off by saying, I don't get Monday morning blues. I love what I do every day. And that is no small part due to this personal development planning and this work. So I love what I do pretty much all of the time, if I'm honest. Are there chores? Yes. I hate doing detailed work. I don't do my own accounts because I find that quite draining. But I try to, I say no to things as well as saying yes to things. And I think I just bit by bit try to create space. So I'd say, if you're not in that space yet, try and keep some of the things that you find quite draining to a minimum and try to cut those out and minimise them, but you accept you will have to do them. And then for the stuff that you really want, try and create just a little bit more space each week, each month, each year, and slowly over time you will get to that point, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I work with Insight Discovery as well. You were saying there's different tools, and I often see it as an energy management tool.
Yeah. Actually,
because it is going, once you learn around the 4 colours, it goes, what gives me real energy, and actually what drains me. So I'm still able to do that detailed stuff, but I know it's going to take a lot from me.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I know my wife, for example, she can go and do, like in the office and board meetings. No one sees the other side of that for the next few days. It kind of catches up, right? And I've known lots of people do that, and I think there's something really powerful in. It goes back to self-awareness, doesn't it? From what you were saying, is what does light you up, but equally, when do I need to repay and be kind to myself?
Yeah, for sure.
Because when you're looking at, like I talk about unlocking performance, it's not just the peak performance, it's that on a sustained basis.
Yeah.
You know, because that's real high performance.
Yeah.
And well, I listen to the high performance podcast all the time, and you know, that seems to be what the habits, the little bits like you're talking about, not this big eureka moment that goes, well, it is sustainable, and therefore I can see this as a career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation between performance and working in areas that light you up? I guess it makes sense there is, but is there anything back in that says if we can get our people, our leaders to work more in the space where they're energised, that they will perform better?
Yeah, I mean, StrengthsScope, for example, are one of the tools. They have lots of stats on their website that back it up. There is various research from positive psychology and other fields of research as well. I mean, the short answer is yes, Lisa, there's quite a bit out there. And that shouldn't really be a surprise, because if you are doing stuff you are merely competent at, you could be good or even very good, but you're never really going to shine the way that someone who has that as a natural strength or passion is ever going to do. Like there's, as an example, my friend, she's a web designer. I outsource my accounts to an accountant. That's my idea of hell. She has a tax return party. I mean, like, she literally just like buys her favourite donuts from her favourite shop. She puts her music on. She clears her kitchen table, and she has a tax party. I am financially competent, obviously, but I'm never going to shine as much as someone like her who just really loves it and gets a real buzz out of it. So that's why I think, yeah, absolutely, you're going to perform better if you're in your zone, if you like.
Yeah, so it's a real plus for organisations as well to look at that.
Yeah.
And go, you know, if we can get our people doing more of the stuff that they enjoy, then we can have a better performance, return on investment, and
engagement as well. I mean, how many times have you seen someone who's really good at their job and they're doing it because it's needed, but they get disillusioned and eventually they check out or they leave? Yeah. And I think that's a real shame.
It is, yeah. We lose people, don't we, in that space? So what if we've got to a place where, you know, we've started to look at it and we find that we're not doing the things that light us up and we're doing so much of that. But what if somebody comes to you, and you might have stories of this, where they realise they're not at all in the area that they should be in, and they think, right, now I've got to think about what's my career plan. What? I know you can't fix that in here, but how would you work with someone who's going, well, I'm just not in that right place and I want to do something different? What's the kind of working pattern with them?
I've done that and a few times with people. I think the first one is, we normally talk about values first of all. So what's really important to you in the grand scheme of life, not just at work, as I said before. We then look at strengths as well. So where are the bits where you really shine, where you really light up? And it's really key to mention here that is not related to tasks or roles. That is about personal qualities that might be transferable across different activities. And sometimes we look to their personal life. So I was working with someone who had a natural flair for hospitality, but they worked in corporate life. That wasn't their thing. They like entertaining. But it was there in their personal life and was clearly working to their strengths. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing is to say, well, actually, in your existing role, is there some scope to create space for these? Can you speak to your manager? Can you create space to do more of this on a day-to-day basis? You enjoy it and you can see if this is, something that really works for you. If someone feels that they need to change industry or career, and they've had this from public to private sector or from one industry to another, then there are a few things you can do. It doesn't have to be a big leap. You could try, working compressed hours or part-time hours, create a side gig. You could make the leap is another one. But the tip I would give here, Lisa, is some people in that position think, I'm not going to make that leap because I have to start from scratch and I'll have to take a salary hit. And my question is, well, why? Because you've got knowledge, you've got experience, you've got skills you can bring to the party. So yes, you'll have a learning curve and you may need to go through that before you really find your flow, but don't assume you'll have to start from scratch. You're not starting from scratch. You've got loads you can bring to the party. And actually sometimes when people combine one career with another and bring those backgrounds together, they can do something new which didn't exist before, and that could be more valuable. So don't discount yourself if you are making a change.
That's good. That feels really doable, doesn't it? Rather than, how am I ever going to make that transition and move to something? Or maybe I'll go into showbiz. I'm actually living vicariously through my child instead, like getting him to do that. But that's a really practical way of looking at it. If we were looking at it from an organisation point of view and leaders in that space, is there anything that they can do more proactively to help people shift into areas that are a bit more in their energy and where they're going to be in flow.
I mean, the first thing I would do is get to know your people as people, and I think post-COVID especially, leaders have realised that they have to know a little bit more about their people on a personal level, and actually most leaders quite like doing it. So getting to know your team as a person as well as role holders is really key, and a part of that is having a conversation about motivations, about strengths, about career ambitions. I think some leaders put this off because they might think, well, what if someone asks for something and I can't give it to them, or what if they want a promotion and I don't have one? But if you look at research on motivation, all the traditional models, they show the things that motivate people is not money. If you're short of it, you'll work for it. But most people, if they've got enough, are motivated by, feeling valued, from doing innately interesting work, from recognition, from responsibility, all of these things. So there's loads of ways you can keep someone happy. So definitely have the conversation. And you won't do it overnight, but over time, if you know what your team's strengths are, if you know what their motivations and ambitions are, you might be able to manoeuvre things over time and put it in your planning. I had a leader do this for me, by the way. You talked about leadership and identity. I was managing a team with the most senior stakeholders, with the largest audience, with the largest customer base, and it's a bit of prestige. And my manager had a conversation with me about strengths and said, Michelle, I've got an idea. You mentioned you were burnt out and overloaded. You don't have to change team or apply for a new job. We'd like to swap you with another manager. They need your design and creativity and expertise and program management, and this person wants to be a line manager. So we're suggesting, why don't you go here and do this instead? And I didn't want to let go of the team. And I was like, but I'm a manager and I don't want to lose my team and I'm doing a really good job of managing the team. He said, yeah, but you're a good manager, but only you can do that, and that's the bit where you shine, that's the bit where you bring to the party. So I'd like you to think about it. And I went away and I thought about it, and I thought, actually, yeah, he's right, that is unique to me, that does light me up. And so reluctantly I let go of the team, and I took on that role, and I just loved it, and that the burnout went, and my career happiness just went through the roof. So yeah, I think as a leader, if you can do that for people, that's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that idea, one of the really great parts, when were you in flow? But equally looking back, and anyone can do this, a line on a piece of paper that charts your career to this point, however long or short that's been, always been some of the really low and tough bits. And it's not always when you've been doing the very best stuff or got the most recognition. It can be it fascinates me with what people come out with it when doing that sort of stuff, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess, looking to wrap this up, what one thing would you really leave people with? And Lisa, I'm gonna come to you first. What's one thing, like career management wise, that is your absolute golden nugget for people? Wow.
I'll go look to you. I do think it is finding your values. Well, for me it has, and it's come later in life, and I do have them in front of me on the wall. So I got it down to 3. So like kindness, fun, inspiration actually were the ones that are really important, and then trying to work through, well, what does that mean in a career? What does that mean in a job? And can I still have that? And using them as my guiding light. We often go, you've got to find your values, but I do think they're really important, and they've helped me work out what's working and what isn't working. I think that's really important, alongside the energy and strengths which really resonated with me today. So, but they're really important.
What's your takeaway golden nugget for people?
I think for me, just make time for it. Make time for you and that self-discovery. We mentioned earlier, we're so busy that feels like an indulgence or a luxury. But if you don't decide what you want and what works for you, you'll just get pulled into what your boss or your colleagues or your industry wants. So, my favourite phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. So work out what fills your cup first, go from there, and then you'll give a better version of you to everybody else. So yeah, put you first, I think.
Nice. And you?
Yeah, for me, I would say, someone described me as courageous the other day, and that's not a word I would have ever sort of thought about or said about myself, if I'm really candid. But I guess in my career I have been courageous to seek out new opportunities, to create a job that doesn't yet exist or isn't in a structure. Even becoming self-employed and running my own consultancy was courageous. It was a conscious choice. So I think there's something about courage and about going for it, to a certain degree, having a plan, seeing what happens, and you know, lots of people fear what might fall over and what might go wrong. My advice would be courageous, have a plan, utilise relationships. Just because the computer says no doesn't mean that it's a no. Like, how do you get around the system if the system is not working for yourself? You know, there'll be lots of people listening to this that have applied for jobs recently on LinkedIn, for example. There are other platforms out there. And the first time they go and click for a job, there will already be 100 applicants for that role.
Yeah.
So that can be demoralising, right? But who's in your network? What strengths do you have, which you guys have talked about, and what is going to give you joy once you get there? There's definitely a practical element to that. You know, people say we're living in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
You know, there are financial impacts. There may be a lack of opportunity for certain sectors or for certain people or groups or whatever. But actually, the only person in control of your career is you. And I think you have to be courageous enough to drive your own car, not allow someone else to drive for you.
Yeah, because they will.
Go through.
Brilliant.
It's been an absolute privilege, Michelle.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Lisa,
thank you so much. That whiz by.
Did whiz by. Thank you so much, Michelle. So great to hear your brilliant insights, you know, and helping others out there with that career management. And yeah, Lee, another one. Wow, went fast, quickly.
Absolutely. So how can people get hold of you, Michelle, if you know they've heard something today and they want some support from you? How would they contact you?
You can go to my website, which is www.divedeeperdevelopment.com, and you can contact me there, or at michelle.pratt@co-creation.group.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Brilliant.